It's time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. How's it going today, Brad?
It's going well. I mean, we're in full swing here. Got a lot of fun stuff. You guys are going to go to Dis South, you and Hunter, Trevor, Connor, Brody. So a little jealous of that, but getting stuff down there and ready, getting the warehouse tidied up. We're actually adding some additions in here, and we've been planning for that. So there's some happenings. I mean, you can tell the season's about to start because it's like release after release after release. I'm like, feel like I'm ordering new like releases every day this week. So very positive stuff. Very positive stuff.
Am I crazy in thinking that first run cigars are able to be ordered?
No, so I kind of love that Discraft did this, by the way. They did not allow pre-sale on any of the new stuff. Bold move. Sick. I love it. Maybe selfishly, I love it because, you know, I love it more for Jason because, I mean, he's a champion and he doesn't complain about it, but like pre-sales and people will combine or other stuff in their order other than the pre-sale, which is fine. We just have to kind of pull it to the side. It has to like sit on a shelf until the actual disc comes in, then we send all the stuff out together. Organizationally, it's like a little, it's fine. It's just a little extra, but
totally.
But you know, and
you
it's
pull
also
orders twice essentially.
Yeah, it's also, you know, it's also kind of fun when a drop hits, and like, you know, when we're doing pre-orders, there's really not a drop because we sell all of them before they get here. And then there's not really a drop, but it's kind of fun. Like, all right, all the cigars are up. Okay, 5 p.m. Boom, here you go. And then just seeing them all fly out, that's fun too. And I don't know. I think it's a better customer experience because people are like, just like, hey, they dropped today at noon. You get them shipped out the next day. You get them in a couple days, and you're good to go. So I like that Discraft did that, but they also pushed back. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the date, but they pushed it back 2 weeks from when they originally thought it might go. So,
gotcha. Okay. But it has like it is for, you can't give us dates, but you know, as a curious minds want to know, is it a world where retailers have been like the idea to purchase them for a later launch date? Like, is that coming?
I don't, you know.
Does that make sense? Like in the question,
are you asking, did we already have a chance to buy them?
Yeah, like is there? Could
we've
you
already,
have
we've already purchased them.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yep, and then they're taking a little longer than expected because it was such high demand, which is great. That means people love them. Yeah. So it's just going to take a little longer to get here, and that's perfectly fine. It's not like 2 months later, you know. It's just a little later.
Yeah, totally. That's really all I wanted to know is like, basically, I'm going to Dis South, Brad. I needed to know. How many cigars am I buying while I'm at Dis South? Do I need to prepare myself for the long winter, or is it?
I will be surprised. I don't know if they're going to be there. I don't know if they're going to be there, but I think there's a really good chance, surely. And
yeah, I hope so.
Also, did you see Brody's confetti?
Yeah, the Get Fetty is hilarious.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm excited. I might have one of you boys pick up one of those for me because that's a good time. But anyway, wow, that was a lot of industry talk for this podcast, huh?
Yeah, guys, it's an exciting morning. I'll also just go ahead and let you know before we dive in, and we'll jump in here to get Gary in. We are operating, at least Brad last week was a champ and operated on such minimal amounts of sleep. Mm-hmm. That's me this week.
Okay.
That is, we are trying to get a second YouTube channel off the ground. And I told Lindsay as I went to bed, I was like, I'm leaving town, but I have to get this video edited.
Yep.
And also Leo just didn't like, I was prepping around him. And so I was like, this takes me back to the beginning of Robbie C days before I had Silas, where it's like video's got to get cut.
Yeah.
Okay. We're editing into the night. Let's go.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I apologize if I say anything wacky crazy. It's gonna be a ride, guys. It's gonna be a ride.
Hey, hold on. I got you, Robbie. I just wanna. Here's what I'm gonna do for you. Do you see what this says? What does it say? It's backwards. It says team. Here's the team.
Yeah. Okay, you got it. It's on his back. It's on his back. He's got me. Welcome into the podcast for the first time on our podcast, but probably
a regular.
A regular on Foundation Podcast. Gary, how you doing today, man?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well, man. I just want to let everyone know the entire podcast, he will be referred to as Gary, Gare Bear, Blue Eyed Killer. I mean, there's many other names, probably those, but that's who we're talking about, just to let you know ahead of time.
For you audio listeners.
Yeah, and he
the
is
visual experience worth.
He is all of those things that you would think. So, Gary came to us via the Imposter series, kind of originally. You were on debate night and stuff first, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Debate night, and then on from there. I'm collecting the Infinity Stones now. So
yeah, you're getting very close. You're getting very close because I mean, I think most notably. I was like anxious to look at your bag because I'm like, oh, that Berg's still in there. But, I think you're really well known for that chain out ace, like clutch chain out ace, almost ace in the Imposter series. So, I mean, when I think of Gary, I think of that moment.
so close. So close.
Yeah. You've got one of the podcasts, Gary. I will say that I'm not sure I'll ever get, and that is not debate night, is Tour Life going for you. So that is, you talk about collecting the Infinity Stones. That is Grip Locked and Tour Life are the ones that I have in my sights okay, how do we do it? And Grip Locked, it's probably also never going to happen. So it'll be fine. One day I'll be up there and one of them will be sick and it'll be like, it's on.
I'm gonna have to just like sneak into the studio and just pop up like behind someone. I think that's the only way I'm gonna make that happen.
That's great.
I love it. Well, Gary, we want our players we want our listeners to get to know you as a player. So, how long have you been playing disc golf?
Yeah, I've been playing for a while. You could tell my age because I can't remember the exact year that I started playing disc golf. But I would say I started, probably back in the maybe 2015, 16 range. I was playing in an ultimate frisbee league every single weekend, and then one day someone's like, "Hey, you guys want to go play disc golf?" I'm like, "What's that?" And so I took one of the lids with me, and they're throwing these small little tiny discs, and they're crushing me. I'm like, "Okay, that's not fair." So I went out to Dick's Sporting Goods, got my first like starter pack, and then it just became my buddy and I playing one-on-one for, I want to say, like a year and a half. No idea that disc golf was a thing, was a sport. And he came out one day with like a 10-speed iDie driver, and he was out throwing me. And I'm like, this, we can't be doing that. So I went onto YouTube and I typed in how to throw discs far. And that's when I stumbled across the very first Champs versus Chumps at De La, and it just changed my whole world. So Here we are.
Dude, what a history.
Gary, birds of a feather, man. That is exactly, my journey is very similar in that my brother was not as good at ultimate as me. He was out driving me, and I was like, "This is not gonna happen." I'm the one that does the pulls, not you. So I love that. So let's talk skills. We take you out to a field, and we're like, I do think it's interesting because people often I feel like it's somewhat relevant, right? Like, we don't talk about ratings very often, but I know that you are a very good player. And so I think people are always, when you meet folks, you're like, most of our guests on In the Bag, I would say, are probably rated in the like 900 or below rating world. But you are, I believe, an MA2 guy, MA1 guy.
It's a blend. I'm doing mostly MA1 this year, but MA2 for the courses that I don't visit very often. I'm kind of playing my rating for those events. Yeah. But anywhere that I've had success at or won before, I'm doing MA1.
I love it. So are you in the 920s?
No, I'm at 912. I was 916, but I decided to play a really stupid winter league round, and because I can't. My rating would probably be in the 20s or 30s if I didn't randomly show up to courses I've never played before for tournaments. I'm just addicted to playing new places and competitions, so I'm probably my own worst enemy when it comes to my rating.
That's fair. Yeah. I feel like if in any world that I ever got 1,000 rated, the temptation would just be like, that's it. We just hang it up right there. Like, I'm never playing a section round again. No, so I get that. I get the rush. It's like flex starts, man. They're so fun. Why would I not want to go play flex start? And then you're like, oh, because that MA4 guy just shot 12 down and
just
tough.
Destroyed.
Okay, yeah. Sick. Okay, so we put you in a field, Gary, and we said we're going to put a basket X amount of feet away from you. How many feet you feel like you consistently reach that basket forehand and backhand?
So I'd say I'd feel pretty comfortable in that like 350 range. I'm starting to push further than that. If I get a good pull on something, I can reach the 400 mark, but everything's got to kind of come together. Throwing over the last 3 months, it feels like nothing ever comes together because you're cold or you're wearing too many clothes. But I know that I definitely can reach that mark. It's starting to become more consistent for sure. But I'd say 350 is pretty comfortable. Forehand, 100 feet, if that's a mark. I have no real forehand. I can like do like a little flick. Most of my forehand is when I'm needing to bail out and I've got to throw something like really choppy and, with the split grip, of course, have to do something like that. But that's covered up by the fact that I have probably about a 275 overhand that I feel pretty good about.
Okay.
And I'd say anything like in the 250 plus mark, I can get pretty close to my target. If you ask me to overhand something that's like 200, I'm pretty sure I can put it within 20 feet. I'm pretty good with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that comes from the ultimate background?
I would say more so. I played baseball when I was younger. I was a pitcher and a center fielder. So I'm very comfortable with that kind of throw. I could probably throw 100 thumbers in a day and feel a little bit sore at the end of the day. I've got a very, very comfortable shoulder. Funny enough, though, you'd think that would help with the forehand at all, but it doesn't. The pitching, when I was younger, I did a lot of like sidearm curveballs and stuff, and that really, really hurt my elbow. So I know there's a way to fight through the pain to throw full power forehands. I just haven't decided to do that yet.
That's fair. That's fair. I do think that it's not worth it. Let's just go ahead and say that. I don't think that this is a game. One of the best parts about disc golf is the longevity it brings. And when we're like, oh, we're just going to push through, it's like, I don't love that. Don't love that. Yep. So we put you on the putting green, Gary, and we said we're going to put you putting. Brad brought up imposter. Putting is, it seemed like a strength of yours.
Yes.
And then also, it seemed like because it was a strength of yours, when you have a bad day of putting, everyone's just like, oh,
imposter.
He's imposter. He has to be, right? Like there's no way he got that bad at putting for a while. So let's put you on the putting green. We're going to make you putt 10 times from 15 feet, 10 from 25, 10 from 40. How many making at each station?
I'd say fairly. First of all, I'd love to see guests submit videos of this. I like hear some of the numbers, and I'm like, I want to see you do these things you say you do. But if I'm a little warmed up, I would say it's comfortable saying that I would make 8 or 9 of the closest ones.
Yeah.
Backing it up, maybe in that 6-7 range. Put me outside C1. I think my advantage is I've got a good spin putt. I develop a decent bit of power without too much worry. I'm probably hitting maybe 3 or 4 of those on a good day.
Okay, awesome. And remind me, what part of the country are you in?
I am from central Pennsylvania. Well, south central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Not too far away from where Mr. Staub is from.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. When I hear like developed spin putters, I always think to myself, okay, they've got to be like a Midwest person because they just, you have to, or else you don't make it. So that is, but I like the spin putt. I said in a video of mine recently, if I could go back and teach myself one of the putts over again, I wouldn't be a push putter. I would be a spin putter all day. I'd take my days where I'm a little bit off and I'm just like kicking myself over there's the slightest wind and I'm doing hypergeometric math to try to figure out what angle I've got to loft this thing in and all that. So, final question, Gary, is what is the biggest strength of your game?
I'd say the mental is probably the biggest strength. I've been a competitor with anything I've been a part of my entire life. And I'm just a naturally competitive person. I used to coach high school boys basketball, and there is nothing I've ever encountered in disc golf that is as stressful as the fourth quarter with like 3 minutes to go, and you have to start doing the foul people to save clock, using your timeouts in the playoffs. So to me, pressure on the disc golf course isn't really a big deal. And I think that there's a lot of power in being able to have a bad shot, throw a bad putt, and not let it destroy you. And I see a lot of really great players have that problem. I see some fueled by that anger, but most of the times I see them struggle with that. So I think mental's a big one for me. I'll throw it into the rough, and I won't say to myself like, that's the worst shot ever. You're terrible. I'll be like, I get to throw a unique shot now.
Yeah.
That's great. Can I ask an additional question? Since again, we don't have a ton of people that are above that, like they've been playing as long as you have and above that 900 mark. So I think it's always important to say, you know, you're not 1,000 rated still. You're still like, I'm sure you want to keep, you know, progressively growing that rating. So what do you, I don't want to say what's your weakness, but like, what are you working on? Like, what's your next step? What do you feel like is going to take you to that like 950 mark? Like, what do you have to work on?
So I would say one of the very common sentiments that about me, I've talked with a few people in the area who are, I would say, I always find someone who is like my goal person. And then when I finally meet that goal person, I pick that next person, try to find games that are like very symbiotic to my own. But for me, it is, I will play 18 holes. I will play 16 great holes. And so it's those last 2 holes that sometimes just get away from me, not necessarily because, you know, pressure. I put it all up to, sometimes I think I contribute so much to the vibe of a moment that I will sometimes vibe myself out of the seriousness of the shot that I'm about to take. And so I will feel good into throwing a bad shot. And it's like, you should have focused up a little more there. You should have taken an extra second or two. Maybe I should have stepped off of it and danced a little bit.
Yeah. So maybe Robbie agrees with that sentiment for sure. So can I also maybe restate maybe what you're trying to say, or maybe look at it differently? Maybe it's like the last 2 holes for, in this example, you're like, okay, not pressure, because you said you don't really feel the pressure, but like, okay, round's almost over. We've almost made it through this. I've done a good job until this point. And you kind of like let off the gas a little bit on the last 2 holes versus like really lock in and be like, okay, I need to complete this good round. Do you think that's maybe like the mentality on, maybe not intentionally?
It's not always the last 2 holes. It's just that there's always like a hole or two in the middle of a round where I get like that. I'm a very intentional person when it comes to preparing to play disc golf. I'm the kind of guy that I'm in the shower the morning of the tournament going, okay, which holes are birdies possible? Which holes are birdie likely? And I kind of prepare myself. I know generally, as long as things don't go off the rails, what shot I'm throwing on every hole, regardless of like if it's going to be windy or whatever. So there are just times when I think I might forget myself in my intentional decisions a little bit and maybe make a choice or just not focus up enough on that tee shot, and I turn it over a little bit, or I just don't give the angle it deserved.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's fair.
The statement you made about I'm pay so much into the vibes that I feel good into a bad shot. Like I think about a moment of someone has like a really bad hole. And so you are trying to like not necessarily reach out to that person, because no one wants to be that guy who's like, hey dude, it's fine. Like, because especially once you get out of like MA4, so people just want to get in their own zone for a second. So then I feel like maybe you start shifting to other people and you're like, hey man, that was a great putt. That was a great, and so you're like trying to raise vibes elsewhere. And then you are so focused on that conversation with the person. Yeah. You get on the tee box and then you shank a shot and it gets a terrible kick and you end up bogeying the hole or something like that. And it's like, those are a lot close? Is that what you're talking about? Those moments?
That's pretty much how it goes. I'll never be the person that like, if you throw a bad putt, I'm not going to be like, nice attempt. Cause I know that I don't want to hear that. So don't tell that. I won't tell that to somebody else. But yeah, if I see someone is struggling on the course, I try to play well for them just as much as I do for myself, because I feel like when we play better, it makes everyone better around us. And I want my card mates to play well, because if they play well, I'll play well. So I'm trying to generally make sure, especially if like someone says it's their first event of the year or their first event in general, I'm trying to give them a good experience. Or if it's their first time at the course, I'll be that guy being like, okay, here's the hole, here's the kind of shots that you want to throw. I'll record the scores, walk up to the tee pad, and then before I've kind of realized it, I've sacrificed my focus moment. And yeah, that's what kind of results.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I could not relate more, my brother. Could not relate more. Especially I play with beginners a lot, and so it's those vibes are high, and then it's like, oh, why was my round just so meh. And it's like, oh yeah, you actually were talking during every single one of your tee shots. So what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
So what a time. Okay, let's dive into the bag, and we're going to start with. I made the joke before we started recording. You are the only person who is associated with Foundation who probably bags this disc besides Silas, and I feel like Silas at this point only bags it for the meme. Just the shocking. Oh, it's this forehand. Talk to us about. I would say I'm gonna throw two discs there because they're both ones that people probably aren't familiar with. Talk to us about the Colossus and the Vulcan.
Yeah, the Colossus. First of all, it's like one of the prettiest flyers through the air, just with the colors and everything. I don't know how the Colossus made it into my bag. I kind of do this thing where every winter I'll pick out 5 or 6 discs that are, they make it to the practice squad, and we'll just through casual rounds, whatever. And I found that every now and then, especially as I started to gain a little bit of power, I wanted a disc that I could go kind of over the top with, or put up into the sky and let it do its thing. And the Colossus, I think, started as a kind of a wind fighter a little bit for me, as my arm was a little bit slower. And then as I started to throw further, I started to be able to throw the Colossus a lot straighter. And now it's kind of, if I want to put something up over top, but I want to really know where it's going to fly, or I want it to go up flat and then kind of dive afterwards, or if I want something that I can throw straight, knowing it's going to keep pushing on that Hyzer, that's kind of what the Colossus does for me. I don't think it's very well beaten. It's definitely not. If you took a new Colossus out, it's not comparable to that anymore. It's a great disc. And then the Vulcan, a long time ago, I loved old discs. I have some of my original discs in my bag. I had a Vulcan that was everything. It was my first ever disc that I threw, got a Hyzer flip, and saw what it could do. And I was like, oh my word, that's amazing. Hyzer flip is the coolest shot to look at. And it was my bread and butter. And I attempted to lose it 3 times. And it always came back to me every single time. Well, last year I went down to Georgia, and I played at that course. They just got done playing, I think, the Savannah Open at, and lost it in the middle of a swamp. And earlier that day, I had already seen 2 alligators and a snake. And I'm just like, I'm away on a business trip. This is not the time to end up in the hospital because I got bit by a gator. I'm like, well, if it comes back, it comes back. And so I have never been able to, and this is a problem that anyone out there who bags stuff that's older knows, I've never been able to find a Vulcan that does that anymore. It's impossible. So I have friends, my boy Jeff and Andy, they're always looking out for me for discs that they know I like, and I try to do the same for them. And they found me this 158 gram Vulcan that now fills a bit of a different slot. I throw this thing on extreme Hyzer, and it stands up beautifully. It's great for those like uphill shots where that it doesn't have time to kind of roll out of it, and you can push power up a hill on like a Hyzer flip. So that's what it's great for. It's definitely way flippier than my old one, but there's just something about the way the Vulcan feels, the flexibility, the gumminess, or whatever you want to call it, that's different than I feel like almost any new disc I pick up nowadays.
I can't recall what a Vulcan. I'm gonna have to. They end up in the used bin every once in a while. I need to just feel one. I can't even recall what they feel like, to be honest with you.
They are wildly inconsistent. So
okay,
I've got 2 Vulcans that are relatively the same weight, and they're both used. They both look the same. You would never know the difference, but one won't turn over for anything. It is straight beef patties on the grill. But this one, I don't know what it is. It just turns over like it wants to be a roller, like it has always been a roller, but I don't let it be a roller.
Yeah.
So it's like a 13-speed Mamba, right? That's really where we're at here.
Well, and I feel like it has like the flight plate itself, if I'm remembering the Vulcan, that's what I was like flying saucer was the word that I was thinking. Because I had a friend who what was it? We used to do an event where we would play a lot of mixed doubles throughout the day, and he was going to play with us and realized that he had left his disc golf bag in his fiance's car, and she had left town. And he told me that on Friday night before we were supposed to play all day Saturday. And he was like, "Can you help me?" I was like, "Well, dude, I got a lot of discs. Like, I can easily build you a bag, brother." And he was like, "Okay." So I said, "Here, go to this website, send him a disc RPM. It's like, put your discs in, and I'll just let me know." And he sent it back, and he had a Vulcan in there. And I was like, "Okay. Well, I'm going to be able to get you the flight of a Vulcan. If the hand feel is why you're throwing this, nah, it's just not going to work." So now jumping from the Vulcan to the other side, another disc that I would say used to be very, very popular and has just gotten overshadowed by, I just feel like, a ton of new releases, but they just don't do this. You have it listed as overhands only. Tell us about the Discraft Flick.
Yeah, the Flick is a great disc. It's titanium, so they're hard to find anymore. Specifically, board flat titanium flicks. They've got to be like throwing a plate. And someone who I played in a club with before I moved to where I'm at now, we used to kind of talk about overhand shots and compare like what disc we use. And we were playing around, and he's like, "Just give this a try." And it was a titanium flick, and it was so great because something about it, I would throw it because I don't like to throw thumbers on any kind of angle. I like to throw like this, I'm throwing a home plate straight up and down, pure distance. And the flick just doesn't get a lot of sideways movement in the air. It typically tends to flip pretty quick and come down pretty quick. And he's like, "Do you like it?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You can have it." And I went out and immediately found another one, and it's just a great disc for thumbers.
Okay.
That is hands down the most overstable disc I've ever thrown, just for whatever it's worth.
Oh yeah.
Did you? I'm going to ask an odd question here. Have you thrown a tilt?
Yes. Not a fan.
Okay, I was going to ask for whenever I meet people that love thumbers, I'm always like, I truly feel like, it's like 75% of people that love thumbers put something like a tilt in their bag because they just enjoy the reliability of what it does. So when I saw overhands only, I was like, okay, I got to make sure that I sneak this one in.
Yeah, I got a tilt because I like to have discs that are part of the culture, the history of disc golf, and the tilt definitely stamped its place in the history of disc golf. And I took it out to a field. I threw it one time. I'm like, number one, this hurts to throw for a thumber. Yeah. I can't do it because that's the thing about the flick is it's flat, so it's just you grip it the most comfortable way you can. It doesn't rip your thumb as it comes out, and then the tilt didn't do any kind of, flipping through the air for me. It just kind of wanted to go right out and come right down. And one of the things that I've gotten very comfortable with the overhand is I have a very particular way of aiming my thumbers. If I know I want to hit a gap or move around a tree, I typically aim at the tree knowing that I'm going to get 3 or 4 feet of left movement as it flips. And so the thumber made it really, or the tilt made it very hard to predict an aiming point and like what the result would be.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that for sure. I also totally understand. Like when people told me that the tilt needed to fly better upside down, I was like, oh, let me go try this. Never not throwing a ton of thumbers in my life before that either. And I remember the exact thing you're saying of throwing it and feeling like I just like ripped off all of the skin of my thumb and being like, what?
Yeah.
Why would you ever do this? Exactly. At what point in a round would that be a good idea?
Yeah, if you ever have to look at your bag and say, I don't want to throw that disc because of how it's going to make me feel, it shouldn't probably be in the bag.
I'd agree.
True.
But yet the Star Gorgon is still in my bag. I don't understand. I don't want to give up on it yet.
Brad, I'll say, in the was it 12 days of Dismiss that we had Gorgons in there?
Yes.
I got that big foundation shipment of discs, and I've been slowly working them into videos. So people are like, why is this Discmas video showing up in March? That's what can I say? I just want to make sure I use all of them. So, but I was feeling that Gorgon the other day, and I was like, I have not thrown a Gorgon since I got my one on release, and certainly unique feel. Okay, so talk to me, Time Lapse and Destroyer. This you've got like a little section of 4 in the middle here for like time lapse, destroyer, trace, surge SS. Something about one thing about your bag is that until we get down to really putters, not a lot of mold minimalization. And we push mold minimalization here. So in this like section of the time lapse, destroyers, trace, surge, SS, would love to know. I feel like this could be a world that you mold minimalize there, but obviously you're an analytical player. What keeps you having 4 separate molds here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think it works perfectly with the trend that's going on right now in disc golf social media, which is how well will I play if I only have X number of discs compared to my entire bag, which is a really interesting concept. A long time ago, asked myself 2 questions: is how hard do I like to throw? Do I like to, throw 50%, 60%, 80%? And then do I like to throw multiple angles with the same disc? And the answer to both those questions is I like to throw hard, and I like to not have to try to remember I need this angle if I'm throwing this disc for this shot, whatever. So all my discs are very intentional to what type of throw I'm doing. And the time lapse flies nothing like my destroyer. The time lapse is only for it's super windy. I need something that it's not going to turn over. Or if I've got like a short shot that I really want to go high over top something, the time lapse is perfect for that. The destroyer is a super beat in old destroyer that it's like if I'm going to get max distance out of something, typically that's the disc that does it. I throw it hard. It gets that slight turn to it, always comes back reliably. It's a beautiful. The only fault with that disc is nobody wants to play with me when I throw this in the fall. So that's that disc's biggest sin. The Surge SS is something that has just made the bag. This will be my first season playing with the Surge SS. There was a live stream with Hunter and Trevor for the used discs. Obviously, if you've never been part of those, you got to go do one of those because you can find some gems in those live streams. But I asked specifically for a kind of a fairway-esque driver, something that I could put on like a turnover line that would hold it for a long part of the throw. And that's what the Surge SS is for. So I don't throw that on anything other than I need to navigate wide around something on like an Hyzer line. And then the Trace is now beat into a point where it flies straight for 90% of the flight. It is I have to hit a gap in the woods. I need it to keep moving and moving and moving. And then it's got that little bit of left finish at the end. So all those discs, I guess, technically kind of exist close to each other on the chart, but I wouldn't imagine that any of them fly similarly to each other. And I would never want to throw my destroyer on a trace line or my trace on a destroyer line, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. And it seems like your Surge SS is really kind of making up for like a long distance forehand for you, kind of, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of that shape you're looking for. So
For sure.
really, and I think even with your thumbers, the theme we're already seeing here is your discs are like, you're looking at shapes for them, not necessarily like, I need an overstable disc, I need a neutral disc, I need an understable. You're looking for like specific shapes. And maybe that's a dumb thing to say, but like, I feel like that you're talking in that language a lot, which I think is really helpful, especially when you're navigating a lot of different molds. Like, and I think it makes more sense of your bag the more I look down. I'm like, oh, well, there's that shape he needs for this speed, and here's that shape he needs for that. So I think that makes it. Is that a dumb thing to say, Robbie, or is that like just a different way to think about like a bag and mold? I guess what molds you put in it.
No, I think to me, it's a sign of being intimately familiar with your bag, and probably makes traveling to play disc golf a little easier than most people can do, because if they're just like, oh, well, this is my overstable distance driver, it's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what lines can you put it on? How far does the hook push, essentially? And I feel like if you're thinking about shapes, when you step up to a hole, the shot shape that the hole asks for is very clear most often. And if it's not, you can somewhat guide it. And Gary, does it feel like, I guess, are you playing like Tetris almost because of how you've built your bag of seeing, okay, this just has to drop in here?
Yeah, I used to throw in a lot of random things in my bag, and I watched this really insightful video once by this this YouTube content creator who's just got a really awesome vibe about him. And he said that one of the best approaches to every hole was to ask, "What does the hole require of me?" And that, of course, is Robbie C. But
I thought it was Danny Lindahl.
but that question, I think that's something I tell. I honestly I refer a lot of people to that video because I think it's a great way of approaching your bag. And so I always try to ask myself, I can close my eyes right now and I can walk you through every line on all of my local courses and what shot I want to throw. And I think even though I have to carry more discs than a few other people, there's something to be said about if I step up to a hole and this is the line the hole requires, and I have a disc that I have thrown on that line so often, and I don't try to throw other types of shots with that, it instills a degree of confidence in my ability to pick up that disc, and it makes me feel way more comfortable as opposed to the first time you get a new disc and you're trying to figure out what angle to throw it on. Like, oh, I needed 5 degrees more. I needed 5 degrees less. Like that inspires, I think, a lack of confidence on the tee pad sometimes until you're intimately familiar with that show or you throw or you've thrown it 1,000 times.
Yeah. And I want to say one more thing too. And I think this is really important because I think I've realizing like maybe something that's inhibiting me growing a little bit more. Again, I'm not playing all the time, so that's the biggest thing, but mental game wise, I think I'm thinking more of my bag, like I was saying, of like, all right, this is my most overstable mid-range, this is my next one, this one's straighter, this one's straight, this one's understable, this one's very understable, right? Versus thinking about like, because Jason and I were actually talking about like the All-Star event that aired this week, and like, the accuracy competition. And to me, the hardest shot on that one is the very first one in that video, which is on that hillside. And you have to throw this hyzer, and I think the reason it's hard is like I'm thinking of like, oh, I need like an overstable putter because it's like only this far, right? But it's more of like the shape that was bad for me versus like what disc I threw, right? And I also had to know like what shape is this going to be if I can't really run up, if I can only step because it's on a hillside, right? And I think I picked the wrong discs probably because I wasn't thinking about the shape I needed to throw. Because again, you're throwing through the uprights and you have to land in a certain area to score the points. So I was thinking more of like, oh, I just need this overstable putter or I need this overstable disc versus like, but what shape though do I need? And I think, the next station I do pretty well at, but it was just like I knew like, okay, well, these ones from this distance I can throw pretty straight and I hope they land like over top of the upright and in the scoring range. So I think that's like, it's just a really good point, and maybe one that's not really talked about a lot is like, putting disc in your bag for shape versus like, I guess their class of disc, if that makes sense. And I think that's what made that, because we were talking about how, I think a lot of people think they can walk up to that event and do really well. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a little harder when you're being filmed, you haven't warmed up and you're just kind of like actually doing it, which is fine. But that we were just talking about why that specific shot was a little harder than it may have appeared. And I think that's probably a very good point. And I think someone like you, Gary, probably could have ate that challenge up because you have such an understanding of what shape your discs are going to give you more than necessarily like, oh, they're just overstable.
Yeah. One of the things that I will say that's probably the biggest con to this type of setup is my bag is filled with shapes. And if I don't have a lot of room for backups to those shapes. So if I'm in the middle of a tournament round and I were to lose my trace, I've lost that. I have other things that can like maybe do that kind of shape, but I've lost inherently that thing. So like if I was doing the shots that you were doing, I would want to go get my discs back because I don't carry 3 of the exact same thing that does that shape. I carry 1, maybe 2 that do that shape. And so that would be like where the problem exists with this type of mentality. Because I won't carry 40 discs to a tournament. Now, if I go to a place where I can lose a disc, that might inform my decision about how I build my bag, because I believe building your bag has to be intentional for every event or course you play at sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I guess kind of jumping down, continuing through your bag, but so your lots or your loots, you wouldn't say that's like similar to your trace? Is it still shaping differently than that disc, or is that just a like shorter version of your trace?
It definitely, the trace I'm always trying to throw as flat as I can. every single time. But the lutes, I have to put on a little bit of angle. I have to put on a little bit of Hyzer angle to get it to stand up. It has a little bit of left to right movement. I would say it is probably a more sensitive destroyer than anything else. My longest throw ever is with my lutes. It's definitely a testament to how it probably matches my arm speed a bit better than most of my other things. And it's my go-to for certain courses where I've got to do a little bit more shape manipulation through the woods, because it's probably the only disc in my bag that I play with the angular release on than any other disc.
And then obviously you have your Tesla, which is, I think that disc is really overrated. So sell me on the Tesla, Gary.
Well, okay, so I got my Tesla is one of the classic, like I want to say, I don't want to say first Teslas. Obviously, it's not first Tesla, but it's a really great proton Tesla that when I first got it, it just flies straight for 75% of the flight, and then it makes a hard cut left. And that's a perfect shape for certain types of hole designs. And I found that no matter what course I'm on, 2 or 3 holes really work out for that shape. I don't have the Tesla that, like, turns over. All, like, other people's Teslas tend to fly differently, I feel like, than mine. And I remember when I really started to like the Tesla, I had a problem, and that was that Simon held his Tesla up to the camera and said, "This is my favorite new disc." And all of a sudden you couldn't get Teslas anywhere. Yeah. But no, I think the Tesla is something that I've thrown, several hundred times. It's flown the same way every single time for the most part. And I have confidence in it. And because there are many, many discs and many molds, many plastics, it's okay if you don't like it. It's not a big deal. As long as you don't tell me anything like you don't like the Berg. That would be, we'd have to have a conversation.
Hey, the Berg's just a thing. No, I think MVP family of discs are all pretty accurate. I mean, really, my qualm is always with the Tesla and the Virus specifically. But anyway, enough off of and then we have Captain's Raptor. I'm assuming it's like a slower flick for you, like a thumber, or what are you throwing with that?
That only makes the bag if I know I'm playing in a really windy situation. I don't throw it. It gets thrown once every 3 rounds. It doesn't really. It is there to bail me out. Like this weekend, I'm playing in an event in a very open course that we're supposed to get like 20 to 30 mile an hour winds. It will be in the bag for this weekend.
Yeah, that adds up. And I feel like if you have the Tesla to Captain Raptor jump, is it safe to say, like, when you have, so Captain Rap wants to it's fading before you throw it. Mm-hmm. The Tesla, you mentioned 75% of the straight flight, and then it just hard dumps. Do you feel like to adjust, is that one that you maybe adjust the shape or the angle you're throwing out a little bit more if you need the hook sooner, but you don't want to go Captain's Raptor? Or do you adjust the Captain's Raptor and just try to put it on Annie?
I'd say,
how do you feel that middle ground?
I'd say I'd be adjusting the Tesla. I don't like the Captain's Raptor is just a disc that makes me feel small. I don't like throwing it if I don't have to. So I'll probably adjust the Tesla if I have to. But it comes down to the distance. Like, there actually reaches a point where the distance makes more sense for me to go down, as opposed, and I'd like to throw the angle with a disc lower speed than to go up. But Tesla, if I have to get the same kind of distance as I need for a Tesla normally, but I've got to get a little more Hyzer out of it, I'll adjust the angle on that one.
Okay. Well, it's not that I want to move past it just to move past it, but in the interest of time for moving down, one thing that I think is really interesting about your bag is that not a lot of bags look like this, and at least on the disc chart, it looks like a funnel. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is like, I'm just noticing that as I come down, and you were like, based on the speed, I'll make this change. So I didn't even pay attention to the fact that and maybe it's because the flick and the Captain's Raptor are just so extreme in how much fade they have that helps make the funnel exist a little bit. Like, the flick is getting into sections of the chart that most discs aren't getting to. But I think about, like, you drop to the Gator 3 in the zones. So in what world, you talked about maybe I just dropped 2. I'm guessing those are the kind of discs that you would drop down to for speed. Like if you need that overstable flight, but it's not Tesla, but it's definitely not a cap wrap.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. One of the goals I had for myself in 2024 was I'd like to be able to throw my zone 300 feet, because if I can throw a zone 300 feet, that opens up a world of options for me in terms of being able to throw safer shots, have less ground play, that kind of thing. And so I've got the two zones. One is your typical Crystal Flex. It's got a little bit of overstability left in it, but it's, I'll throw that one on a little bit of Hyzer. I've got my beautiful ESP zone, which is a local company made a version called the DNA series, which is really, really cool because their name is Double Helix. It's a really sweet process, but that has become a absolutely straight zone. I mean, to the point where I even throw it on a tiny little bit of anhyzer out of my hand, and it just flies so straight for me. It's beautiful. The Gator 3 represents one of my lessons learned about building my bag, and that's that I used to carry a third zone. That third zone was a brand new Crystal Flex zone, very overstable. But I found that when I try to throw 3 discs of the same mold for 3 different types of shots, it is extremely easy to confuse yourself on the T-pad and make mistakes. And so I wanted to get a different mold in there that accomplished the same type of thing for me, but gave me a different hand feel so that I knew I'm not throwing this like my other zones. And I did a bargain bin battle with one of my friends on his YouTube channel, and I got this, Joel Freeman Glow Gator 3, and we were joking around about it, but now it's become a staple in my bag for I need to push something on Hyzer that reliably dumps, and I can put a little bit of power into it.
The Joel Freeman, when people are not connecting these dots, but I think that is one of the biggest losses to the disc golf community, that Joel Freeman is not with Innova anymore because of the fact that we will not get more Gator 3s. Like Team Champ Series, I'd argue it was one of the best Team Champ Series discs out there, because finding overstable, like, people are going to hate me for this, finding overstable gators, actual overstable gators, can be very difficult. There are lots of gators that are frauds. It's just an older mold. It makes sense inside of Innova's lineup. It's why any of those older molds are going to be inconsistent. But the Gator 3, every single Gator 3 that Joel Freeman dropped was money. It's one of the few discs that I have like hoarded in my collection, and I just don't pass out. I'm very selfish with my Gator 3s, so I feel that in my soul. Jumping over to the Rift, I know I've got a couple patrons that are going to be like, you got to talk about the Rift. Robbie was in the bag. So let's talk Rift and Hex, and then we'll do a nice soiree over to the P1. And then we've covered all the real good discs in the bag. So I think we should be good. So talk to me about Rift and Hex.
So the Hex was a disc that I didn't touch until my first ever glow round at the end of 2023, going into the 2024 season. I won a couple Lazadals for some tournament winnings, and I'm like, I need some. I didn't have any glow discs, so I'm like, I need to throw this in the bag, and I threw it, and I was so amazed at how I could put it on a little bit of Hyzer and it would stand up for me, and felt like I could get effortless distance out of it with no real issue. And so I started throwing it more, and now it's kind of become my go-to. I'm in the woods. I need something that I'm going to get more distance with than my zone, and I want to throw hard. And the Hex lets me throw, and it takes the torque resistance really well, and I can be more accurate in the woods and kind of adjust the angle slightly. I don't play around with angles too much with the Hex, but it's great for that. Whereas the Rift fills a specific thing for me. It's a cover up of the lack of forehand. I looked for a long time. I tried many mid ranges to kind of fill the gap for me on how I could get that left to right movement. And the Rift, I got this in my 2021 Ledgestone pack, and it sat in my shelf for a couple years. And I picked it up and I threw it, and it just held the anhyzer perfectly out the bag, never thrown before. It held onto that flight, and it just flattened out at the end, and it was It was beautiful. I birdied a hole I've never birdied before locally, and I'm like, this is great. And so now that's kind of where the riff sits for me. Is I like to, if I have to move left to right, and I have the space to do it, which is a key problem, is that I can put that out to the left, and it'll just pan itself over, but it won't turn into a roller. It doesn't go to the ground. It flattens out so nicely. It's like a butterfly landing on the ground with sore feet.
What a beautiful description. I'm gonna have to pass that along to the boys. I do love that you mentioned that left to right movement. I'm trying to remember what molds they were saying it was between there, because they were trying to say that DGA tries to sell it as it's like between a buzz and a blank, but I couldn't remember what the other one is. But I do like that drift, and I think that people forget about that drift existing. Okay, so P1s, you putt with P1s?
Yes.
And throw them?
No, I don't throw them at all. I putt with P1s, and then I have a P1 in a different flex that I use for like circle 2, because I like that it's a little bit more. It's got a little bit more over stability. I can go on like a little bit of flex putt with it.
Okay. And the nerds will get on to me if we don't talk about them. Talk about that disc. Well, what does it do for you?
So I'll say this: I am not one of those like people who like treats the Berg like it's a cult. I don't tell everyone they have to have one, but I will say it changed the way I approach the game of disc golf. I would say if I could attribute any disc to my jumping over the hump of 900, it's probably the Berg, because one of the most difficult shots for me were always my up shots, because not having like a serviceable forehand, that a forehand comes in real handy when you've got those little like 100-footers or whatever that you want to get to the basket, because I feel like you can see where you're throwing a lot better. The Berg filled that slot for me instantaneously, and now I feel like I'm never really overshooting the basket. I'm always getting it under the basket. I mean, anyone who saw the Imposter series, I threw that Berg all over New London too. And if I have a place that's within, and that's the other thing, is I wanted to get my zone to 300 feet last year. I want to be able to throw the Berg 250, because if I can throw a Berg 250, then you take me out to any course in the woods, and if I have a landing, like if it's a par 4 and it's 450 feet, we can slice that up in 2 throws with no issue. So the Berg is just something that you can throw hard, and because I like to throw hard, it just takes the torque, which is great. So I have 2, because one is for drives and one is for upshots.
Okay. Well, I get it. I enjoy the Berg for what it does. Do I think other discs can do similar things? Yes, but to your point, the other discs doing other things, you have to manipulate them and do that. And I can totally get that is a confidence crusher of sorts. And especially if I don't have the Berg and I am used to throwing a certain disc on that quote Berg shot, and I lose that disc. Now I'm trying to take another disc that I've not manipulated before and try to make it do something. It's very. The Berg does what it does really well. I will live and die by that statement.
Yep. I get a few reps in my P1s just in case I ever run into a situation where something happens to a Berg's been around. But yeah, the Berg is just what it is.
Yeah. I also, the thought of throwing my throwing putters or my putting putters just makes my soul like we had a cold snap, and I putted with one of what was going to be my main putting putter of the year, and it nailed like a band on a Mach 3, which doesn't have a band. It has those little like nubs.
Yeah.
Oof. Took a chunk straight out of my putter, and I was like, did you just die? Did you just get relegated to the practice the practice squad? So can't imagine throwing it. Okay, so let's talk suggestion disc here, because we've talked about how the lack of forehand, but Brad isn't always brought into the information. I don't usually give him all the information. So I want to, Gary, you've done a really good job with me of vocalizing in our messages why this slot is needed for you. So I think it's important for this one, Brad, to give you sort of full context, because behind the scenes, Brad's gotten multiple chances to test these discs. So could be really, he's got more confidence on throwing these. Gary, talk about what this slot, why you don't have a disc in this slot, and sort of the struggle you've been on through it, to give Brad some context.
Sure. So I play a lot of woods disc golf. We've got great woods courses here in Pennsylvania. And one of the struggles that I have is when I run into situations where I need something that's going to move left to right, I have two options right now currently, and that is to attempt to throw like my Rift, which requires a significant amount of space on the left and freedom to move through the air. And if I try to force that, that's when I hit that first tree off the tee pad that's to the left, and now I'm in a really tough spot. Or my second choice is to lay up to the corner, or as best to the corner as I can, and I'm just never – I don't have anything to give myself that option of being able to that I can throw straight or flip up to turn. I don't have anything that can handle that angle a little more sharply through a bit of a narrower space. And so it kind of forces me to take pars on holes that I know I have the distance to reach. I don't have a shape that kind of fits that class. And I've tried some discs, and I haven't gotten I haven't found anything that kind of fits that for me.
Okay. Interesting. I think I told Robbie I threw these disc once. I threw them again today, and I told him decision still stands even without knowing what's going on. I think the decision still stands, I think, Robbie, if I'm being honest, even after hearing the whole bit. I was just very confident because again, you have the advantage, Gary. I've very few people on this podcast I've ever seen play. So like, I also know how you throw and have seen you throw quite a bit. So that's an advantage as well. So today we threw
that. That's nice.
Yeah. We threw two discs. This is a lobster from Mint Discs in Sublime Plastic, and then a cherry from Clash, steady ring cherry. What I will say about each of these discs, let's just do the normal hand feel. They both feel great. Sublime Plastic from Mint is more firm than the steady ring from Clash. I mean, it feels like any other Clash plastic. It's real like the appropriate amount of gumminess, but not like spongy. You know what I mean? So, and I think like hand feel wise, they both feel really good. I bagged a lobster, so like I'm really familiar with that disc in particular. I'm gonna hold up for you, Gary. Sorry for people not watching, but like I don't know if you can see the profile on this lobster. The reason I like the lobster is it has like more of it's a lower profile. It's more mid-range up to like fairway kind of feeling. It still feels like a mid-range, but it's like a little less steep. And then the cherry actually feels a little more like a putter, like although it is a 5-speed. It's just a little deeper, I guess is what I'm saying. The lobster's a little more shallow in the hand. The cherry's a little more deep. Now, I don't like a deep mid-range, so it's not in that class of like it's too deep, but it does feel a little bit more, I don't know. And I kind of like that I can grip it a little bit more. I feel like I have more grip on the cherry than the lobster. So that like hand feel, they're both good. I just think they're just different hand feels in general. I don't think I can compare them, apples to apples on that. But the real interesting thing about these two discs, the cherry is 5.5 -2.1, and I would say that's for me extremely accurate. I didn't throw these on forehand or anything like I normally do because, again, I know that we're trying to solve that without having a forehand, right? They are fun to flick, like a little flick up, like approach shot. So they're fun that way, but that's not what these discs are built for. I felt this for a little bit with a lobster in my own bag. The lobster's a little touchy. Like, it's great up to like 70% power. Like, you feel like you can lean into it, but there is a threshold in which you cross with a lobster that it'll just turn quickly and not come back. There is a power threshold, at least for me. That could be form based too, but I like it on a shot that I still can throw hard-ish, but I'm never going to step up to a tee. I'm actually going to go down to an NV to throw hard before I would throw like a lobster, like my straight to understable envy is what I'm saying. I'll throw that hard to get that turn versus like the lobster. I'm using the lobster in like a little more touchy lines. I don't have to throw as hard. The cherry, I just felt like I was throwing this so far today, and a couple weeks ago when I threw it, and I just felt like I could throw it as hard as I wanted to. And it just like, even for me, if I'm trying to get these as straight as possible on release or flat as possible, I'm probably going one side or the other, a little Annie, a little Hyzer. And I could get these things, if I really felt like they came out on a baby Hyzer, they would flip up instantly and just turn, but not fast. They would just turn. And at the very end, and again, I think some of it's my nose angle too. And I don't think you have issues with that, Gary. I think the only thing that's really making this like kind of get a little stable at the end, or like stable up at the end, is the fact that my nose is a little up when I'm throwing them. I think if you kept like nose down, it would just like beautifully turn the entire time for you based on like seeing you throw the other discs that you throw. I think what's beautiful, I'm going to recommend the cherry. Spoilers. It's just, I think it's what you need. So I'm not going to wait. And I love the lobster too. So I bag it. I've bagged it for a while. I think the cherry though is just going to be that disc you want that'll just like flip up and just turn. You don't need a large window for it to do that. It'll just flip up and just turn for you. I think that's really, really easy for someone like you that has some more skill and more distance to just like off the shelf get this to turn and do like what you want it to do. I do think it's cool because it is a like pretty, like you can still manipulate this disc. It's not like a one and done or like a one trick pony. Like if you want to encourage us to like give it some nose up and like give it a little Annie, it will turn that way for it. Cause I did, well, you both have played at Tim Brook. So out in like the soccer field there where the guys usually throw for like socials, there's a way you can stand where like 16's baskets over to your right, and you have to throw like a sky Annie to get around like the soccer goal there. And like cherry, I had two I was throwing, every time would just like turn and do like that butterfly set for you, but quickly. It's not like taking forever to get over there. I think the way I watch you throw the berg, and your goals of like throwing the berg far and throwing the zone far, I think you're really comfortable throwing like, I don't know, like a little deeper disc. And I think it's going to give you some comfort of like that putter approach type disc as far as hand feel, but like the power and just like the turn you need out of a mid-range to be like reliable and score for you around like, and I do picture the shot you just described, which is like more of a tunnel shot, but it's moving left to right and you need it just to kind of carry that shape the whole time. I think the cherry is going to do that for you. I worry with a lobster and you liking to throw hard that it's going to burn over for you. Or it's going to be like real finicky and it's going to make you doubt you're not going to pick it up because you're like, I don't know. It can't get too far right. Or I don't know. I don't know if I have enough left movement. You know what I mean? I think there's like some decision making that will be not ideal for what you're trying to accomplish. So cherry for me, Robbie. I don't know how you feel.
No, I'm here for it. I think that the thing about the lobster, and you nailed it, was that like it's just the lobster can fit into that seasoned disc super flippy that Gary fears. Mm-hmm. And like it's just inconsistent. It's hard. The only benefit that it has is that that's its stock, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is, you lose it, awesome, just go buy another lobster, and it's going to start there. But it also, because it starts there, could quickly turn paradox level because Gary's playing in the woods. So mm-hmm. like, Gary's better than all of us, so he's not going to hit any trees. But for those who might hit trees, mm-hmm. playing in the woods, I do think it's an underrated thing that people don't talk about. Like, especially if you're a West Coast golfer, your discs probably don't season in as fast as if you're playing water heavy courses out there. You're probably losing discs before they season in quite often. Whereas if you're a wooded golfer, you do season discs just faster because your courses require it.
And I will say, Gary, if you were like, oh, I throw 285 to 300, I think my recommendation is the lobster probably. But, and if you were like, oh, I don't, and you specifically said, hey, I like to throw as hard as I can. I think it's a very, very different disc for someone who throws that way. So now, happy to send the cherry out to you, Gary. I think it's going to be like what you want the Rift to be. I think you love the Rift, but it's not what you really want it to be per se, or what you're missing. And I think it'll be a nice complement to that like Rift Hex combo for you.
Yeah, that sounds great. Plus, honestly, the vibes write itself, because when you get a great shot, you can say, and a cherry on top. I mean, you can't.
Yeah,
you gotta be able to do it.
Yep. I love that. That's
all
great.
about a good meme with it. Well, Gary, if we throw this cherry in the mail for you, would you be willing to come back on and let us know how it flies for you?
100%. Listen, when I come down to the Hyzer Club Championship, I'll tell you face to face how I feel about it.
Oh, heck yeah. Let's do that.
Come on. I love it. Awesome. Well, Gary, dude, we appreciate you having on. Glad to be the next stone in the gauntlet. And wish you the best of luck on completing the gauntlet. Yeah, maybe Hyzer Club Championships. That's what you got to do. It's just, you got to sneak in, got to get a key, sneak in, and that's where you grab it. So, dude, appreciate you. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you in a future episode.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Gare Bear.
Bang.
Nice episode. Great man. Very excited to finally have him on. Like you said, I mean, he is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Is that what he says? Did I make that up? Is that what he says when he puts the last stone in the gauntlet? I'm not a Marvel guy. Does he say I am inevitable?
He does say I'm inevitable. I'm not sure it's when he puts the last when he does like the last stone and he snaps or something. Maybe it is. I'm trying to remember that scene. It's been a minute. I feel like
Marvel.
that movie is like, that movie's got to be close to like 10 years old at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy, but
which is insane.
Yeah.
Also, I will say a stone that sadly Gary may never get in, that I am proud that I have in my gauntlet, Trevor Staub show.
Oh yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah. Eat that, Gary.
Yeah. I will say the one podcast that we on Riverside is the platform we use to record all of this, is a little inside for our listeners. All of our shows that we use Riverside for have their own studio. So you just like select the studios going down. And there's one that gets used quite often, but it's for a different podcast, but it's labeled as Plastic Addicts. That was one that we'll never get to be on.
That's sad.
How about there?
I miss plastic.
The OGs know Plastic Addicts.
Yeah.
It only had like 12 episodes, but the OGs will know. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, speaking of plastic addicts, I got some stuff coming into the warehouse this week. Oh, check out that transition. You're not the only transition boy here, Leroy.
Nah, that was well done. Well done.
Okay, cool thing showed up. Buzzsaws. We have more buzzsaws, so those are dropping Friday when you're listening to this. So make sure you check those out. Also, the Peak in both Royal Plastic and I'm blanking. Two different plastics on the Peak dropped on Thursday. So that's the one. So those dropped this week. That's pretty exciting. I know Isaac's been hype on those, and I haven't had to throw one yet. Connor and I may throw one after this podcast, doing some reviews, but keep an eye out for that if we do. Let's see. Meridian released some cool stuff this week. I'm going to read it off the board because they're very unique. So the Rip Current, which is an understable version of the Current, or a more understable version of the Current, they're plastic. The first time it came in, I was like a little hesitant because it looked like Z Flex Jawbreaker kind of, but it was like pretty firm, and I didn't really love it. It felt like glass, and if I threw it against a tree, it was going to shatter. But this new blend they have feels incredible. Very, very Z Jawbreaker Flex-ish. So that's a lot of fun. We have the Tundra, but it's in marbled plastic or marbled graphite. Very cool swirl. I've never seen a swirl like this in a disc. So they're definitely trying to, like, I think, innovate and give the people what they want over at Meridian. So that's pretty fun. And then also the Ravine, but it's in their it's called Hyalite plastic, but it's their glow plastic. So that's pretty fun. So make sure you check those out. We're doing a crazy DGA. Like, I ordered all of the DGAs, and I think 2025 might be the year of DGA. I don't know. Only from, like, I think there's a lot of good molds and plastic there, and they've rebranded as far as like the stamps on their discs. They all look very clean, very good right now. They've rebranded their plastic names, so like I think it's PL. Is it PL? No, Dia, or I don't know. I have to look again, but they've rebranded. So there's like Spark plastic, and they have a new plastic called Atomos and like or Atoms. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, they have some new plastic names and a new plastic type. Also, the Typhoon is released with the first run Typhoon, so you have to check that out as well. I believe that was the Katrina Allen Proto that was released end of last year. Has a name. It's the Typhoon. So very excited there. Oh, there's a baseline Quakes, which I'm going to grab one from my bag. Very excited about that too. So a bunch of DGA, buzzsaws. I mean, there's a little bit of everything. Again, Brody Smith's store is up on our site. Make sure you check all that out. And then, hey, if you all are going to Disc South or have an opportunity to make it down there, make an hour or so drive, all the boys will be down there. Robbie, Brody, Hunter, Trevor, Connor. Yeah, we're doing an exclusive release down there of the Bogey Bro Ranch stamp on Halo Mako 3s. So those are going to be awesome. Also, let me come in closer. I'll tell you a secret. There's gonna be Hunter Birds and Trevor Cashes and Connor Shamans and new Robbie C stamped wizards. And make sure you check those out because they're not on the site right now. Okay, we can come back out. Secret's over.
Okay. Secret's over.
Yeah, but yeah, there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff down there. A bunch of Brody stuff as well. So make sure you stop down there, hang out with everybody, and if you can, and if not, shop online. And we'll see you on the next episode. And in the meantime, if it's good,
keep it in the bag.